there, this is Fabi, and what you see on the screen is a composition of some decorative stitches in the AccuStitch program that I have combined together because I'm going to embroider this on a blouse that I have to kind of jazz it up a little bit. What you see on the screen is basically about, oh, I didn't even count them, but let's just say it's about 8 stitches or 9, maybe somewhere even more than that I've put together. I want you to notice, first of all, one of the things I want to tell you about it is that all of these stitches are STX files that are available in either the AccuStitch program or in the Horizon Link Suite section of your Horizon Link Suite. So they are STX files. The only one in here that is not something that came in a program are these that I have on my outer edges. This is something that I composed myself in Stitch Composer. And so what I'm going to do now is just walk you through how it is that I compose this particular stitch pattern. Now what I want to first of all start off with is I already saved this as a design as a Jeff Plus file, and that is so that each one of these lines of stitches is retained as a separate design element. That way, if I ever decide that I want to do something with this design again, and let's just say, for example, that I want to change this outer border to a different stitch, I would be able to just pluck that out of there and replace it with something else because it is a Jeff Plus file. All right, so what I started off with is on my home screen. First of all, I went to my hoop size and I selected my GR hoop. The reason that I started off from that size of a hoop is because I already measured the blouse that I'm going to decorate. And I actually kind of nicely turned out that the area that I wanted to fill in down the bodice of my blouse happened to be just about the right size using the GR hoop. So I was not going to have to re-hoop and try to match up designs. So it worked out really well. So I selected my GR hoop. The next thing I did is I went into the View tab, and under the Color tab, I went ahead to change the color. And you can see that I chose black. And the reason why I did that is because my blouse is primarily black. It does have a few little stripes on it, and so basically the background color is black. So I selected my black color. The other thing that you're going to notice on the screen right now is that I do not have the grid turned on. You're going to see it just as a plain black background. But when I composed this design, I actually did have the grid turned on. And as you can see, it's really, really busy when you do that. So it can be a little bit distracting to the eye. However, one of the things that I wanted to do as I brought in my designs was that I wanted to be able to line them up. And even though they're all vertical lines, I really wanted to make sure that they were centered in the center of the screen. But, in hindsight, I really didn't even need that to happen because I can always come over into my Edit tab and I can select all of my designs. And when they are selected, I can use the center button here and it will just pop everything right into the center of the screen. And so for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to keep the grid turned off for now. All right, so what I'm going to do is I am going to just absolutely wipe out by selecting all of the designs on my screen. Oops, I moved that by accident. I didn't intend to do that. Okay, let's try that again. I'm going to select all the designs on the screen. They have all turned blue over here in the design list, and over here they've all got boundary boxes around them, and I'm just going to hit my delete key and they are gone. So what you see on the screen now, if I zoom out on this View tab just to fit in the window, you're going to see that the program has retained for me my vertical and my horizontal marks for the embroidery hoop. So that is helpful also for lining up designs when we're working in the program. All right, AccuStitch, Home tab. You know that I was doing a straight line of stitches, and there's going to be a couple of different options here. Now, if you don't know where those are at, this is how the View tab, this Home tab for the different shapes actually looks when you open the program. But you can hit this little downward arrow, and you're going to get all of the shapes here. What I want for my straight lines is I want this one here, which is called tapering. This is similar to the tapering feature that we also have on our embroidery, on our sewing machines. All right, so where am I going to go? Typically, when you open up this program, your program is going to open up in the AccuStitch folder. The AccuStitch folder is where your stitch samples are actually at. And so I've just navigated there because I needed to get back to the very beginning of this program. So stitch number 1 that I want is going to actually be found, I think it's in the applique section. This is the only one that I don't think I wrote down the number for. So let me just search for it real quickly. Yeah, it's in applique and it's number 6. And it looks to me like it's just a plain old straight stitch. Okay, just a stitch pattern. Why do I want to do this? Well, basically what happens when you do decorative stitching on a piece of fabric is that you kind of need to do a little bit of stabilizing. Typically with a straight stitch, somewhere down the center of the stitch pattern that you're going to create. And the reason to do that is it kind of stabilizes your fabric and it keeps it from getting some puckers and so that kind of thing happening. So let's just go over some of the things that I'm going to do here. Stitch number 6 is right here. I don't need to change it. Under the total pattern length, I already know that my GR hoop is 300 millimeters in length. So I type that into the millimeter box here. My layout is I want this to be a vertical layout. And the stitch pattern itself, you know, it doesn't matter if it tapers at the beginning or the end because it is just a straight stitch. And the other thing I could change over here is in the advanced settings. If I wanted to change the length of the stitches or anything like that, I could do that here. I'm not going to. I'm just going to convert this, close the screen, and what I see on the screen is a green boundary box around my decorative stitch. When I click on it, you don't see anything. And the reason why is because the default color in this program is black. All right, so I'm just going to rapidly come over to my color tab. I'm going to pick a light color. I'm going to call forth just this one, bedtime pink. Turn it into a pink color, and that way I can see something on my screen. So that's going to stitch first, and it's going to be my stabilizer. And all the other decorative stitches will be created around this stabilizing stitch here. All right, stitch number 2, back to the home tab, back to my tapering stitch design. This time I'm going to look for a stitch in the heirloom category. This is also a stitch that's here in the AccuStitch program. So I'm double clicking there and the stitch is number 8, one here. I'm going to open it. So here we've got a couple of different things to change. All right, again, we want a vertical orientation. This time I want, again, a 300 millimeter length because I'm going to use the full length of my hoop. I don't want the stitch to start off with a taper. So I'm just going to select this straight end, but I do want it to end with a taper. You can see the changes here in the little window. And I want my angle here for my bottom taper to be 45 degrees. So I'm just highlighting this angle box and I'm going to type in 45. You can see that my end changed right there. The next thing that I want to change is in the advanced settings. I will click on that box to make it activated. And I'm changing my length this time. Not the length, excuse me, and changing the width of the stitch down to 75%. So that's this box here. Again, just highlighting with my mouse and typing in 75%. And I'm going to leave the pattern length just as it is at 100%. Sometimes when you change these settings for the width, it will also make an adjustment in the length. So kind of keep an eye on that when you're playing in this program. All right, so right now it's telling me that my design is 300 millimeters, and right over here, I'm going to hit the convert button, close it. Again, it's a black stitch, so I'm going to come right over to edit. I'm going to change my color again. This time I'm going to pick this soft tan color. They're just right up here near the top, and they're actually colors that are going to look good on my actual blouse. So what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to move it over. Helpful if I zoom in, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up this left edge of my stitch right on top of that pink line that's there. More or less. I might have a little tiny bit of space there. All right, this stitch here, I'm going to come to the Edit tab. I'm going to copy and paste it, and I'm going to flip it here at the vertical flipping. All right, and I'm going to move down on my screen so I can see what I'm doing at the bottom here. So I'm just going to drag it over, and you're going to see now that I've got a nice little band with some nice tapered points on it. So one of the things that I could do here at this point is I could select this design that I just created. No, I'm wrong because I did create a point here at the bottom. I was going to suggest that I could actually use the horizontal mirror to flip it so that this stitch is going to stitch vertically this direction, and then it possibly could have stitched back up that way if it didn't have this tapered point. So nope, I can't flip it. And I'm just going to look in under the view tab. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit closer and just kind of make sure I've got a little equal distance in between those two stitches. Looking pretty good. All right, stitch number 3, I'm going back to the home tab. This time I'm going to go looking in my quilting menu. I'm going to, yeah, I think I'm going to stay with a tapered stitch. From heirloom, I'm going to hit my green arrow button and I'm going to come to the quilting menu, double click on it. The stitch I want is number 12. It's just this plain looking little railroad track sort of thing. I'm going to open it. Again, I want my starting point, or I'm going to have my stitch length here for my pattern. I'm going to shorten it down. And the reason that I'm going to do that is because this time I want my stitch to end somewhere around here at the top of the tape where the taper is beginning, okay? And I've already trialed this, and so I've already know what size I want. I want it to start with a blunt end. I want it to end with an angle, and the angle that I decided that I liked after some experimenting was 55 degrees. My total pattern length up here, got a little distracted there, is 293 millimeters. Okay, and again, vertical orientation. My advanced settings on this little railroad stitch is I'm going to change the width down to 70%. I want this rather narrow. This time I think that this would totally be up to what a person might choose to want. You're going to see my sample of my stitch here. Double check to make everything sure is how I want it, and I will convert it. And it's now on my screen. I'm going to close it. It's black. That's one of the disadvantages of me making that black background. You know, maybe I ought to even just switch it for the purposes of the demonstration. How about that? Make it easy on everybody, huh? Okay, here we go. So there's my stitch. And this time what I want you to notice is it looks like the taper down here is at the bottom of the screen, right? And the reason why is this total stitch length is 293. So it's not all the way up at the top of my stitch pattern here. So I'm just going to drag it all the way to the top of the screen and move it over a little bit to the left so that my stitches are touching one another here. Let's take a look and see how it looks at the bottom. Looking pretty good. I like how my tapers are kind of lining up here. This time I'm going to change this color again to something that's going to show up eventually on my black fabric. So edit, color, and this time I'm going to choose, oh, I don't know. I think I'm just going to drop on down and pick another kind of a pale color. I think I'm going to go with this custard cream. I already know what colors I'm going to embroider eventually. So I'm going to say custard cream. I have changed my color and I am now going to copy and paste it, vertical mirror, and then I will drag it over. Now remember that I always like to change my colors if I know I'm going to be duplicating something. It saves you some steps later on. So I've got those patterns all together now. All right, so now we're up to 5 decorative stitches. The next one I'm going to do is going to be a little star stitch. It's going to go right down the center of my band of decorative stitches. I'm going to come back to home. This time I'm just going to choose this plain old straight line. If it'll let me do it. Sometimes this one wants to act a little quirky. It's in quilt mode and it's number 8. It's a little star that's connected with some straight stitches. I'll open that up. My total pattern length will be on this one 295. It's going to be the vertical orientation. I don't need any tapering or anything on this one, so that's why I chose that straight-ended there. Let's convert it, and there's my stitch. So this time, again, I'm just going to grab it and I'm going to move it all the way up to the top of the screen. All right, let's go ahead and look at this little at the top of the screen. There's my little star. And down at the bottom of the screen, it's going to end up, somewhere down here where those tapers are at. Let's go ahead and come to the edit. Let's change the color on this one to, oh, you know what? I'm going to pick a pink or something so that it just shows up really bright. Let's go with neon pink for those little stars. And I just need one band of them. All right. The other thing that I might also mention to you is that when I actually stitch this out on the sewing machine, some of these stitches I might want to have them stitched 2 times just so that they show up a little bit more boldly on my fabric. And so that's one of the reasons why I like to have each one of these design elements as a separate color. Even though I know in the future when I'm actually at the machine embroidering it, I may only be using 2 different colors of thread on this design. But because I know that parts of the design, like I know already that this center section is going to be on its own just because of the density of the stitch, it's going to look fine just stitched out one time. However, these ones here, these little railroad tracks, might benefit from being able to be stitched twice. Same thing goes with the little star down the center. They may need to be stitched twice just for the boldness. And so I am keeping each one of these lines or sets of lines as separate colors. Okay, so back to my home tab, and my final stitch sequence is going to be that stitch that I said I had created myself. It's going to be not tapered. I'm just going to use a straight line on it. My stitch number is in my own files, so I'm just going to go up, up, up until I get all the way to where my Horizon Link Suite program is, because this is where I have saved my created stitches in this My Stitches folder there. The stitch that I created was, I called it a decorative stitch number 156. You can see I've got quite a few here. This is it. I'm going to open it. And on this one, let's see, I think for my stitch length, I forgot to write this down, unfortunately. All right, I think I'm going to be probably at about 295 length. Let's experiment on that one. That was my mistake for not writing it down. And I'm going to change this to a vertical orientation. I want my stitch to just be original like I created it. Let's see how I did on my size. I'm going to zoom out and just put this in the window. Did I make it too big? Or am I okay? So it's all the way up at the top of my screen. Down here at the bottom, yeah, I think I made it a little bit too long. Let's zoom in and let's come all the way down to the bottom of the screen. Yeah, it's too long. I really want this to end up somewhere around here. Okay, so I had that at 295. I'm going to take it down to about 293. I'm going to leave that one there just so I can compare. Okay, so decorative stitch 156 is right here. I'm going to open it and I'm going to change that to 293 because that's a little bit different in size. Vertical orientation, convert, close the window. Let's see how it compares. So I'm pushing it all the way up to the top. Is that, it's just still a little bit on the big side. I'm going to take it all the way down to 290. Let's try a 290, all right? All right, 290 for one number, 156. All right, 290. See how we do this time. Vertical, convert. Yeah, 290 is a little bit short. This one was way too big, so I'm going to click on it and delete it. Let's see how this looks. If I drag it all the way over. I don't think it's bad. I think I'm going to leave it. 290 I think is going to be just fine. So let's get rid of the ones that we don't want. This one here, I'm going to duplicate it. I'm actually going to change the color because remember on my original design, I had it look like there was two different colors that were twining together and it looked really pretty. So I'm going to go ahead and change the color on this one to something that I have not used yet. Let's change it to a really dark red. Let's go with jockey red. Okay, and now let's go ahead and copy and paste it and drag it over to this side. What I'm going to do with it right away is I'm going to vertical mirror it. So now we've got them looking like they're a mirror image of one another. All right, so let's drag it over and drag this one over. Oops, I don't know why that happened. So what I want is this little edge to be kind of lining up with my little railroad track. And I want them all the way up at the top of my hoop. Just making sure that everything is up there. All right, so for the last stitch, and I may end up rotating this depending on how this looks here on the side once I get my next one in. Okay, so I don't need to go back and reproduce what I just did a while ago. I can just copy and paste these. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to click on it. I'm going to use my copy and paste. It's right on top of the other one that's there, so you can't even tell where it's at. I'm going to change this to this. I'm going to scroll down and find a lighter color somewhere in here. How about beige? That's going to show up really well on my black fabric. And I'm going to flip it so that way I get that little twined together look. Yeah, I like it. Copy and paste it. And I'm going to drag it over so that it comes over here. I'm going to vertical mirror it. And let's get those two together. So what I'm going to do, look down here at the bottom of the screen. Let me go ahead and zoom way in so that you can see what I'm doing. At some point, you get bottomed out on how far in you can zoom in on these programs. But looking here, I actually want these to kind of touch down here at the bottom. This one needs to be moved over just a smidgen. All right, and this one, I'm going to move it over to the left just a little tiny bit. I do want them to be right on top of one another. And, you know, I think I like what I just created. It looks almost identical to the one I had done a little while ago. Just scrolling up and down and looking at it, it's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and come back to our View tab and let's go ahead and change my color back to the black. So there's my blouse fabric. There's all my decorative stitches in my band that I created. Now the last thing that I want to do before I save this design is I do want to, just dragging this to make this bigger, I'm going to select all the designs. So I'm clicking on the first one. I'm holding down my control key. This is how we have to do it in this program. Everything's turning blue here on the design list. Everything is now selected. Zillions of green boundary boxes. Come to your Edit tab, and now you can hit this as a center. Yep, everything moved over just a smidgen. So my design is centered in my hoop, and it's going to be ready to send over onto a USB stick to use it for my blouse. And I think I really like that. I'm happy with my layout. Wanted to just notice that down on the bottom for your status bar down on the bottom. If you're into the metric system, this was going to make a whole lot of sense to you. If you're not, this is 42 millimeters wide. So, you know, in the world of the English system, let's see, that's going to be not quite an inch, right? Is that correct? Yeah, not quite an inch. It's a little bit shy of being 1 inch wide, I think. Terrible with metric. Anyway, let's look back on this at the Home tab. I wish one thing this program allowed us to do was to look at it in 100% mode, but unfortunately, I don't think it does. What I could do is I could come over and look at my Print tab. Let's see if we get a print preview. Because, you know, I definitely would want to stitch this out using a template placed on my fabric. And how come that didn't come up? That's a little strange. Anyway, I probably would go ahead and print this out and see what it actually looks like. There seems to be a little glitch running in the program that's not opening the print preview menu for me. Okay, that's it. That's how I created this design, and I'm now going to go and send it to my machine and stitch it out. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.